Trust me, I am the most popular person ever, and there's no way I wouldn't win the popular vote. But that doesn't mean that I have lost the entire election. If you can just bring it to me, Santa, I will think about dropping the charges against you for trespassing in Trump Towers.
Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
It is our basic human right to be fucked up.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis.
This is part 2 of a 2-part series. If you want to hear about the setup to the election, the circumstances it occurred in, and the beginning stages of the lawsuits, tune in for part 1. But if you want to drop in here, we're going to continue our coverage of the continuing lawsuits, the final nail in the coffin for Donald Trump losing the election for the 56th time, and when things get really spicy in January.
Good afternoon. My name is Gabriel Sterling. I'm the Voting System Implementation Manager for the state of Georgia. And just to give you all a heads up, this is going to be sort of a 2-part press conference today. And at the beginning of this, I'm going to do my best to keep it together because it has all gone too far. All of it. Joe DeGeneva today asked for Chris Krebs, a patriot who ran CISA, to be shot. A 20-something tech in Gwinnett County today has death threats and a noose put out saying he should be hung for treason because he was transferring a report on batches from an EMS to a county computer so he could read it. It has to stop. Mr. President, you have not condemned these actions or this language. Senators, you have not condemned this language or these actions. This has to stop. We need you to step up, and if you're going to take a position of leadership, show some. My boss, Secretary Raffensperger, his address is out there. They have people doing caravans in front of their house. They've had people come onto their property. Tricia, his wife of 40 years, is getting sexualized threats through her cell phone. It has to stop. This is elections. This is the backbone of democracy, and all of you who have not said a damn word are complicit in this. It's too much. Yes, fight for every legal vote. Go through your due process. We encourage you, use your First Amendment. That's fine. Death threats, physical threats, intimidation. It's too much. It's not right. They've lost the moral high ground to claim that it is. I don't have all the best words to do this because I'm angry. And the straw that broke the camel's back today is, again, this 20-year-old contractor for a voting system company just trying to do his job. Just there. In fact, I talked to Dominion today, and I said he's one of the better ones they got. His family's getting harassed now. There's a noose out there with his name on it. It's not right. I've got police protection outside my house. Fine. You know, I took a higher profile job. I get it. Secretary ran for office. His wife knew that too. This kid took a job. He just took a job. And it's just wrong. I can't begin to explain the level of anger I have right now over this. And every American, every Georgian, Republican and Democrat alike should have that same level of anger. Mr. President, it looks like you likely lost the state of Georgia. We're investigating. There's always a possibility. I get it. And you have the rights to go through the courts. What you don't have the ability to do, and you need to step up and say this, is stop inspiring people to commit potential acts of violence. Someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to get shot. Someone's going to get killed. And it's not right. It's not right. And y'all, I don't have anything scripted. This is, like I said, I'm going to do my best to keep it together. All of this is wrong. The Geneva who said for Chris Krebs to get shot is a former U.S. attorney. He knows better. The people around the president know better. Mr. President, as the Secretary said yesterday, people aren't giving you the best advice on what's actually going on the ground. It's time to look forward. If you want to run for re-election in 4 years, fine, do it. But everything we're seeing right now, there's not a path. Be the bigger man here and step in, tell your supporters, don't be violent, don't intimidate. All that's wrong. It's un-American.
Yeah, before we get into the Rudy Giuliani stuff, I'd just like to point out that a lot of the rumors that turned into conspiracies were kind of just misunderstandings of how election workers' job is done. Like, one example that I've seen is people taking videos of these election workers putting it through the certain machine 2 times, and them saying, oh, they're counting all the Biden votes twice. But it turns out that that was a function of the machine to put each vote in twice to get a proper scan of the ticket. And a whole bunch of things like that, like people saying like, oh, well, this dead person signed up to vote. A lot of those were misreported, or when they happened, people misunderstood, or the flaw was caught immediately, or like a little, like a picture of a piece of a screen was taken out of context. A whole bunch of stuff like that, but they erupted into real live rumors online.
Donald Trump has continued to assert without evidence that the United States election was undermined by voter fraud. And social media users have falsely claimed that citizens across the United States cast more than one vote by registering under the identities of deceased people. This is said to have happened in key swing states, the likes of Pennsylvania and Michigan. The claims have continued to spread on social media. You have Republican representatives like Matt Gaetz pushing this out and pointing the finger at the Democrats, blaming them without evidence that they are trying to steal the election.
We know that dead people don't always vote, but when they do, they most certainly prefer to vote by mail.
And these claims continue to be reiterated and pushed by Trump's own campaign. We have seen a lot of experts who have told us that these rumours about dead people are not uncommon. In fact, they appear at every election. And indeed, you've seen state officials from those key states like Pennsylvania and Michigan who have repeatedly said in statements this week that there is no evidence of any voter fraud involving dead people. In fact, they have described these claims as wrong and inaccurate. For example, we spoke to Tammy Patrick. Now, she is a former election official in the state of Arizona, but she also advises for the Democracy Fund. That's an organisation that oversees voting in the United States. She told me that in some examples it can be where people have given their vote early, for example by mail. They have then died in the period between voting and election day, but they are still registered as a deceased voter. This can often confuse the public and feed this narrative of dead people voting. But Tammy Patrick also showed me her analysis, which shows that in some people, when they're registering on election voter rosters such as this one, signatures which might overlap into different cells can often trick the system into thinking that more than one person has voted when it is just one signature. This is what Tammy Patrick told me.
In a signature roster where a voter signs in, their signature overlaps into other voters' signatures. And so it triggers the system to believe that all 3 or 2 of those voters have voted when, in fact, it was just one very flamboyant voter with a large signature. And when we look into these allegations of voter fraud, those are the sorts of answers that we find out, not that it was, in fact, fraud.
Now, there are also allegations about voters legitimately registered but have unusually old birth dates. But a number of experts have said this can be explained with administrative errors or even voter confidentiality issues. And for more on this, I spoke to Jason Roberts, who's a professor of political science.
Someone could have a date of birth of 1981, so they're 39 years old, perfectly reasonable age to vote. Some clerk entering the data enters their date of birth as 1918. Suddenly they look like a 102-year-old voter. I mean, there's human error in elections, absolutely no doubt. And there are small examples here and there of people who do try to vote illegally. But there is no evidence whatsoever of any sort of voter fraud on any sort of a scale that would ever affect the outcome of an election.
It was pretty ludicrous. And even seeing people and elected officials respond to a lot of those videos, it's still just ridiculous seeing a lot of the comments on it. It was like, oh, well, you say that, but my friend's cousins say that that's not really the case, and it's just, they're not going to believe it no matter what you say. So it just goes round and round. The almost all of the cases were focused in the battleground states. So Pennsylvania had 18 lawsuits, Michigan had 8, Wisconsin had 6, Arizona had 6, Nevada had 7, and then Georgia had 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Minnesota, 1, 2. We're in total about 50 lawsuits. And that includes the lawsuit that was filed by our Attorney General here in Texas, Ken Paxton, who, I can't say this enough, is being investigated by the FBI. He was indicted on securities crimes. He is a legitimate criminal, and I cannot believe he still has a license to practice law. But he filed a lawsuit alleging that there was fraud and irregularities in the election, and he filed that with the Supreme Court. And Trump filed an amicus brief moving to intervene. And Ken Paxton's lawsuit was ridiculous enough, but Trump's filing was just absurd. It was several pages of half the country thinks the election was stolen. There's no way Trump could have won both Florida and Ohio and then also lost the election. Plus, Trump outperformed expectations, so losing the election means it was definitely rigged. Then the filing says that SCOTUS should definitely intervene because they think elections officials don't really know how to run the elections properly in their own states. But it was only in the states where Trump lost. And then they said that they don't have to prove that fraud occurred, only that the elections didn't turn out the way they should have, because the elections not turning out the way they should have was evidence that fraud occurred.
That sounds kind of like saying the quiet part out loud. Like, we don't have to prove fraud because us not getting our way is fraud.
And the dumbest part is that the whole premise of this lawsuit was that the Texas lawsuit was filed saying that their primary interest is in who gets elected as vice president because the vice president is president of the Senate and the state's sovereign interests are represented by the Senate. And so the essential idea behind that was if the leader of the Senate, who is the vice president, is somebody they don't like, then they're suffering some kind of harm. And it's just it's just the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Like,
it's very much like, I didn't win, so I'm going to take my ball and go home. You guys are being mean.
But the person I don't like is going to be in charge of the Senate. And so that means I'm not going to get to have my way in Congress. So that means this election was bad.
Well,
and
you see little, like, fragments of Trump, like, acting like that way in previous times. Like, when he had his University of Trump or his Trump University, whatever lawsuit, he said, well, it's not fair because I'm building a wall and the judge is Mexican or something, so it's not fair, therefore, like, it's not, like, he's done this shit so many times.
Donald Trump not backing down or backing away from his view that a judge in one of his Trump University lawsuits is biased against him because the judge is Mexican-American.
If you are saying he can't do his job because of his race, is that not the definition of racism?
I don't think so at all. Federal District Judge Gonzalo Curiel was born in Indiana. His parents from Mexico.
This judge is giving us unfair rulings. Now I say why. Well, I'm building a wall, okay? And it's a wall between Mexico, not another country.
But he's not from Mexico.
In my opinion,
he's from Indiana.
He's Mexican heritage, and he's very proud of it.
In interviews that aired this weekend, Trump calling his reasoning common sense and going even further.
If it were a Muslim judge, would you also feel like they wouldn't be able to treat you fairly because of that policy of yours?
It's possible, yes.
He keeps claiming that there's fraud everywhere anyway. I mean, he was saying that in 2016 during the 2016 election. If I lose, it's going to be fraud. If I don't win, it's going to be fraud. If I don't win by a landslide, it's going to be fraud. And it was all 100% fraud, no matter which way it went.
Well, in 2016, he alleged fraud. I think he even alleged like millions of fraudulent votes, even in 2016, even though he won.
Yeah, he won and then said there was fraud because Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million votes. And so he said, well, the only reason I didn't win the popular vote was because there were millions of illegal voters. There were illegals voting, like illegal aliens.
Yeah, like it's this like that's like his fallback line is it was fraud, voter fraud, and yeah,
right.
And he's
trust me, I am the most popular person ever, and there's no way I wouldn't win the popular vote.
Can you do a like Dear Santa letter asking to win the election or something in that voice?
Yeah, sure.
That was a really on point Trump impression. Well done, my friend.
Dear Santa Claus, I am writing you to give me this election. I have lost the Electoral College. I have lost the lawsuits.
But that doesn't mean that I have lost the entire election. If you can just bring it to me, Santa, I will think about dropping the charges against you for trespassing in Trump Towers.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. I love it.
I smell a Patreon special.
Yep.
Yes.
Also, that's going to be the opening clip for this episode. I know it already.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, just they kicked the lawsuit down, but the states that had been called out in the Texas lawsuit were allowed to respond, and Pennsylvania gave their response, and it was about 50 pages of you chuckle fucks, why do you even have law degrees? But
this is the preliminary statement that Pennsylvania used to respond to the Texas Supreme Court election fraud case. Since Election Day, state and federal courts throughout the country have been flooded with frivolous lawsuits aimed at disenfranchising large swaths of voters and undermining the legacy of the election. The state of Texas has now added its voice to the cacophony of bogus claims. Texas seeks to invalidate elections in 4 states for yielding results with which it disagrees. Its request for this court to exercise its original jurisdiction and then anoint Texas's preferred candidate for president is legally indefensible and is an affront to principles of constitutional democracy. What Texas is doing in this proceeding is to ask this court to reconsider a mass of baseless claims about problems with the election that have already been considered and rejected by this court and by other courts. Its attempts to exploit this court's sparingly used original jurisdiction to regurgitate those matters. But Texas obviously lacks standing to bring such claims, which, in any event, are barred by laches, are moot, meritless, and dangerous. Texas has not suffered harm simply because it dislikes the result of the election, and nothing in the text, history, or structure of the Constitution supports Texas's view that it can dictate the manner in which 4 other states run their elections. Nor is that view grounded in any precedent from this court. Texas does not seek to have the court interpret the Constitution so much as disregard it. The cascading series of compounding defects in Texas's filing is not only underscored by the surreal alternate reality that those filings attempt to construct. That alternate reality includes an absurd statistical analysis positing that the probability of President-elect Biden winning the election was, quote, 1 in a quadrillion. Texas's effort to get this court to pick the next president has no basis in law or fact. The court should not abide by this seditious abuse of the judicial process, and should send a clear and unmistakable signal that such abuse must never be replicated. I bet they were condescending as fuck.
They were.
Yeah, it was, yes.
Wonderful.
It was 43 pages, just absolutely beautiful, just the perfect chef kiss, just amazing. Josh Shapiro is the Attorney General for Pennsylvania, and he is the most amazing person I have never met, but I already know he is amazing. I would let him litigate anything for me. But
I'd let him litigate me.
Yeah.
Just litigate all over the place.
Yes. Just litigate everywhere. But the Pennsylvania response to that lawsuit said it was underscored by an surreal alternate reality. That alternate reality includes an absurd statistical analysis positing that the probability of President-elect Biden winning the election was 1 in a quadrillion.
What?
Yeah. One of my friends is a PhD economist, and she and I were talking about that stupid report in our Slack today, and they certainly are numbers. They are not bad numbers. And the guy they got to run this study is a legit PhD economist from Rutgers, and he got his PhD in 1969. But it's very nice. But it's one of those things where as soon as you add in logic and outside factors, the arguments he makes just completely fall apart. So the biggest problem with the Texas lawsuit is that Texas has no legal standing to tell other states what to do with their election laws. At all. But
they're sure trying.
You would think being a Lone Star state, they would kind of want to leave things alone, but no.
Well,
no, but I mean, the hilarious thing is that everybody is pointing out, well, if Texas can tell everybody else what to do with their state election laws, can we come in and argue with Texas about gerrymandering? And of course, it's like, what? What, voter suppression here in my state? No.
Well, and it's funny because in one of the court documents it says specifically Texas has alleged, and we the undersigned would join in charging that, quote, an elite group of sitting Democrat officers in each of the defendant states coordinated with the Democrat Party to subvert the presidential election. And they say Democrat Party, like that's not actually the legal name. And they also go on and they're credible allegations of cabal and oligarchy. Who writes that in a lawsuit unironically, you know.
I don't know. That next Tom Clancy novel sounds kind of dull. I think I'm going to skip it.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. I mean, the Pennsylvania rebuttal was amazing, though. It boils down to Texas has no legal standing. All the complaints he brought up were already dismissed by every other court they were brought in. Disliking the incoming vice president does not mean you're suffering an injury. Also, you waited way too long. It is December. You didn't specify which part of the Constitution got violated. You don't meet the threshold for injunction, and you didn't even cite the correct standard. And also, disenfranchising people is bad, plus you're idiots. Bye.
The Pennsylvania rebuttal is the name of my new, like, Rage Against the Machine kind of punk kind of group.
Yes.
Wait. The party that, or sorry, the team that confused a landscaping company for a hotel totally fucked this up? Weird.
No.
I'm shocked.
I have no idea how that would have happened.
Yeah, it's so weird how that happened.
What makes it like even more of a loss for Trump is like this is best case scenario for him. He shoehorned a new Supreme Court justice onto that court just before the election. He had 3 right-leaning judges that he put on there. Like, this is best case scenario for him, and it still got kicked down.
So, Mr. Attorney General, the question is, even if you're right, and there are going to be problems with this type of volume, especially when you have unsolicited mail-in ballots, is the horse out of the barn? Is the election over? It's been 5 weeks, and a lot of these judges, there's been 50 cases, and without a victory, a lot of the judges, a lot of these courts are saying, I don't want to hear it.
So even though the genie's out of the bottle, our argument isn't necessarily directly about the fraud. Our argument is that because these states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin did not follow their own state law, and that these orders were by other elected officials to change the law or by other judges, that is unconstitutional. Therefore, that election, we can't go back and fix it, but we can say, okay, let's transfer this to the legislature, which used to do this in other states, and let them to decide the outcome of the election. That would be a valid constitutional situation.
With breaking news tonight, the Supreme Court has just rejected Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's lawsuit to overturn Joe Biden's victory. That suit was backed by 17 other state attorneys general and had the support of President Trump. The High Court voted 7-2 in its decision. The next step in this process, the Electoral College will meet on Monday to formally elect Joe Biden as the next president.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love following the MAGA chud like meltdown as a result of that. Like now it's interesting because a bunch of them are like shitting on like Kavanaugh now, and it's like, oh, y'all were like
all
defending him, and now you're
all
like
hate SCOTUS now.
Yeah, and now they're all like, well, he's a rapist and everything else like that. It's like, yeah, now you believe the allegations, hey?
Yeah.
Now it's convenient.
Yeah, well, they all hate SCOTUS now. SCOTUS was their last chance to get Trump. So now they're all hoping for martial law. And
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty great. I mean, it's ridiculous. But
doesn't Texas like state rights and small government? But they want martial law to subvert the election of all the other states.
Well, it's
they
funny.
Want whatever will get them their way.
This is really funny because like you end up with like all these posts, like for example, there's like a Twitter user PS_Patriot, and they say, I'd rather have martial law under Trump than these fucked up Rona rules and restrictions. And it's like you want martial law because you can't wear a fucking mask. And that's how extreme these like
I love the logic.
You're violating my liberties by, making me wear a mask. We need martial law to, have the police oversee everything I do.
It's ridiculous. And
sense made.
I mean, even going through Twitter today, there are still so many people, and it's still really hard to tell who's a Twitter bot and who's not, because some of them look like really legit profiles, but there are a lot of people replying to threads who are like, no, Trump really won, or there's so much fraud, there's so much abnormalities, and this study of these machines just came out. I can't believe Michigan is certifying the electoral votes because there's all this fraud that they found with this machine in this one county. And they're just completely adamant that actually Trump won, and they're refusing to accept the results. And even Stephen Miller was on, was it CNN or something today, saying that they were going to send alternate electors to send in votes. And so several states had GOP, like the state GOP for Nevada, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan all sent in or tried to send in alternate electoral votes to have them counted for Trump.
Trump campaign senior advisor Stephen Miller joins us now. Stephen, at noon, they're supposed to certify the election on January 6th. They're supposed to transmit it with the vice president with the gavel, Vice President Pence. What would stop that?
Great to be on this morning. Thank you for having me. The only date in the Constitution is January 20th. So we have more than enough time to right the wrong of this fraudulent election result and certify Donald Trump as the winner of the election. As we speak today, an alternate slate of electors in the contested states is going to vote, and we're going to send those results up to Congress. This will ensure that all of our legal remedies remain open. That means that if we win these cases in the courts, that we can direct that the alternate slate of electors be certified. The state legislatures in Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania can do the same. And likewise, Congress has that opportunity as well to do the right thing. If you just cured 3 simple constitutional defects, Donald Trump's the winner of this election. Whether it's the signature matching in Georgia that was illegally changed as a result of the consent decree without the legislature's approval, or whether it's the hundreds of thousands of improperly cast ballots in Wisconsin, absentee voters who never actually submitted the request for an absentee ballot, or whether you're talking in Pennsylvania, the clear equal protection violation when Democrat ballots were cured in advance of Election Day and Republican ballots weren't. These are just 3 of hundreds of violations that we've documented, and those 3 violations alone make Donald Trump the winner of the 2020 election.
Every state 50 times lost, some with Trump judges. So do you have the worst legal team who just don't seem to be presenting a good case, or are you just too late and this case should have been brought before the election?
We did bring these cases before the election. But what you have to appreciate and realize is that the pressure from the corrupt corporate media to make everybody cave and bend is overwhelming. It is overwhelming. And so, yes, judges are caving. Yes, politicians are caving. We need heroes to step up and do the right thing.
My mind goes back to 2016 when all of the conservative types were up in arms and frothing at the mouth because a bunch of Democrats kept saying, "Not my president." Is this not the exact same thing of like, well, Biden's not my president because he's a leftist?
Oh, that's a fucking coup. And it's so weird because Biden's not even a leftist.
No, to the entire rest of the world, Biden is like a center right. But according to the GOP, he's a pinko commie liberal socialist.
I wish there was a way to vote for the version of Joe Biden that these MAGA chuds have in their heads, because that would have been way cooler to have won.
I fucking wish. Yes!
Like, there was audio that was just released of a interview with Biden, and he very clearly says in the audio, like, that he doesn't like progressives and he wants to basically, like, get them out of the Democratic Party because he thinks that they're sullying the Democratic Party. So that's how fucking progressive Biden is. He doesn't want to play with the progressives. But, like, you know,
pretty much Democrats over the age of 50 hate progressives. And, I mean, I say everybody, but most Democrats under the age of 50 are more progressive and left-leaning. And it's very hard to keep them in the party, but we have a 2-party system in this country. It's very hard to separate from that. And so the Democratic Party has a very tough time keeping them in the party. And it's just super fucked up because you have all these old farts who are like, well, you either toe the party line or you don't. It's like, well, we don't have anywhere else to go. I mean, we're not Republicans, but you guys don't want us to be Democrats either. So what do you want?
Did you know, fun fact, even in hell, we still use a preferential voting system as opposed to first past the post when we're trying to decide who goes where.
Hell sounds awesome.
Hell's great when you're a demon, yeah. I wouldn't suggest it for you fleshbags.
Could we watch a clip of Trump Star Witness?
I have
Oh my
that
god,
pulled up.
Trump Star Witness.
I love that lady.
Can you watch it like the SNL version of it or the Amy Schumacher version of it?
I have the actual. So what I have lined up here is the Michigan election worker who came forward alleging extensive illegality inside counting center with her lawyer, because that's something you need to bring on to Fox News, being interviewed for the first time. Because when I Googled her, every video was essentially so-and-so, I was not drunk. I'm Melissa Corona, and I was not drunk on Fox News, which is exactly what someone who's drunk on Fox News would say.
Breaking news now. We have obtained a new whistleblower complaint from a woman in Wayne County, Michigan. It lays out in detail what appears to be outright illegality that took place inside the TCF Center in downtown Detroit. The sworn affidavit signed by IT worker Melissa Corona exposes how ballots were scanned and counted, in some cases multiple times. Let me start with the most egregious part of what I read in your affidavit. Multiple counts of the same ballots. How did that happen?
So the workers are handed ballots in stacks of 50s. They are referred to as batches, and they run them through the tabulators. When the ballot has any kind of a mark on it, it'll stop. The tabulator will stop completely, and the computer will put up an error, and it'll say, ballot number 25 has an error. And so the process would be to take ballot number 25, as well as all of the other ballots that had already went through the tabulator, off, put them back in a pile, put ballot number 25 on top of the stack, discard the whole batch, and rescan it.
And instead they went through that process several times. Describe the night shift chaos that you described. Food vans apparently showing up, but not with food, but with ballots, apparently. Give us a sense of what happened there.
So so I worked a 24-hour shift. I started at 6 a.m. and I got off at 6 a.m. The next day. So I started at 6 a.m. November 3rd, got off at 6 a.m. November 4th. So I was there during their day shift and their night shift. The city provides the workers with food for their shift. Well, they only had enough food for 1/3 of their workers.
Boy.
So that is the reason why they were claiming that these vans were brought in. But these vans did not have food taken out of them.
And the vans that showed up, they were supposed to be filled with food. What did they have in them? Do you know?
I never saw anything being brought out of the vans. I know that whatever was being brought out of the vans was being brought out of the back of the vans, but I was not allowed over in that area at all. But the vans were definitely not big enough to be carrying enough food for 2/3 of those workers.
Well, it's all very suspicious. It is very clear that you have witnessed highly irregular.
Well, not only did Melissa appear on Fox News, she also appeared in front of the Michigan House Oversight Committee, of course, with Rudy Giuliani in tow, to prove to this committee that the votes that were cast in Michigan were fraudulent. And of course, with hilarious results that cannot be taken seriously. Here she is before the Michigan Oversight Committee, who decided to not entertain ideas of fraudulence in their election since there was no evidence. And this was the star witness of the quote-unquote fraud evidence.
The poll book is completely off. Completely off.
Off by 30,000?
I'd say that poll book is off by over 100,000. That poll book, why don't you look at the registered voters on there? How many registered voters are on there? Do you even know the answer to that?
No, I guess I'm trying to get to the bottom of this here.
Zero. There's zero.
So my question then is if the...
Guess how many, wait, what about the turnout rate? 120%?
Let's let Representative Johnson ask his question, please.
So the poll book number, there's two things that could happen here. Either the poll book number, if ballots were counted multiple times, there's two options. Option number one is that the poll book numbers are not going to match.
They don't.
The actual. Not by thousands and thousands of votes. That's not what we see right now.
Take a look again. Take a look again.
Option number two is that they essentially were filling in names of people who didn't vote.
Dead people too?
So is that?
Let's let Representative Johnson ask his question, and then when he's done.
I thought that was his answer. Okay.
Well, I guess that's my question here is why we're not seeing the poll book off by 30,000 votes. That's not the case.
What did you guys do? Take it and do something crazy to it?
I'm just saying the numbers are not off by 30,000 votes. So
I know what I
saying
saw.
That they're filling in.
I know what I saw, and I signed something saying that if I'm wrong, I can go to prison. Okay. Did you?
Okay,
I'm just trying to ask you a legitimate question here.
Yeah, let's let Representative Johnson ask his question, and then don't interrupt him, and then if you want to respond to it, that's fine. And did you have more, Representative?
Yeah, I guess I just want to keep following back up with the poll book. So are we saying that the poll book is either wildly off or that they are filling in names?
It's wildly off, and dead people voted, and illegals voted. Okay. So that's my answer.
Going back to the ruling from Judge Kenney, Timothy Kenney, he writes that your description of the events at the TCF Center does not square with any other affidavits. Yeah. He says that there are... excuse me, I'm speaking.
Please,
thank you.
Let's let the representative finish, and then you can answer.
He writes that there are no other reports of lost data or tabulating machines that jammed repeatedly every hour during the count. He also writes that neither Republican nor Democratic challengers nor city officials substantiate your version of these events. The allegations simply are not credible, is what Judge Kenney writes. So my question for you is, you're making claims here today that there's systematic fraud in what's going on in our elections. Are the courts also tied up in that fraud?
Let me tell you what I did by accident, okay? I gave Channel 7 an interview that they tied in to that and made me the witness that's uncredible. Guess what? There's going to be a couple behind me that are going to say the same thing I just said. And
the witness before you was also proven not credible as well by the same judge.
Oh, no, she wasn't, because she wasn't even there.
Representative Camilleri, let's let her finish, please.
The very first time.
So I just want to understand, I don't know what exactly all the things that are being talked about there are, but can you tell us what you said today is the truth? Is that correct?
Sir, I wrote a written affidavit. Yes, it is 100% true.
Okay, and did other people observe this?
Absolutely. And behind me, you're going to hear a couple.
Okay, and we'll hear from them.
And let me just state this: I was an IT worker on the stage. I was working with Dominion. I had no poll workers were not allowed on the stage. The data loss, nobody would have heard about that besides me, Samuel, and Nick. Okay? Just like nobody knows that Samuel went to the Chicago warehouse besides me because I worked for Dominion.
Why is it that we're not having more people come forward? I mean, it seems like if there was
tell
all
you
this
why.
widespread fraud, that we'd have dozens and dozens of people.
I'll tell you why. My life has been destroyed. My life has been completely destroyed because of this. I've lost family. I've lost friends. I've been threatened. My kids have been threatened. I've had to move. I've had to change my phone number. I've had to get rid of social media. Nobody wants to come forward. They're getting threatened. Their lives are getting ruined. I can't even get an actual job anymore. I can't. Because Democrats like to ruin your lives. That's why.
Yes. Very suspicious when you unload things from the back of a van.
I'm still
instead
not
of the
sure if
front.
they got fed or not. I don't know.
I hate to do this, but I'm still a little bit skeptical about her.
Apparently the van thing is the best thing that she said. But yeah, vans, they can't carry food. They have to have, well, I didn't see what they had in them, but
But it couldn't possibly have been food.
So it had to be Biden
clearly.
ballots instead of
Yeah.
food? Is that?
Yeah, my cousin's uncle says he voted like 4 or 5 times for Joe Biden.
So many dead lawsuits. Yeah. I mean, even Trump still refuses to concede the election. Still, he refuses to concede the election. And
yes, it's the 14th of December.
It's the 14th of December.
Yeah,
All of the
yeah,
electoral
goodbye.
votes have been sent in, and he refuses to concede. They're ceremonially read in front of Congress on January 6th, but all of the votes have been certified. They've been cast. They're official. It's at this point just ceremony.
I'm
like, get out.
See, I'm curious. Like, I think this is a show, and I'm sure there's something else going on behind the scenes that they're doing, and he's just doing this to like buy time or to distract everybody because we're all talking about this. I'm sure he's doing some other shady shit that no one's talking about because no one's looking at it.
Yeah, taking advantage of his last time in office to do, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe he's trying to secure freedom for himself, freedom for his family. I think he might feel like the wolves are closing in, that kind of thing.
Shredding documents, burning evidence, burying the bodies,
isn't he trying to preemptively pardon himself for no particular reason? He didn't do anything wrong?
Can he really do this?
Well, when it comes to pardoning himself, that is a very, very legally questionable area, primarily because nobody has ever tried to do that. The Supreme Court has not ruled on this because they've never needed to and probably assumed for a while that they wouldn't need to. The argument, a lawyer could get way further into this, but the argument essentially boils down to, on one hand, the Constitution lets him pardon people. It doesn't say this person or that person. It's described as a very broad power. On the other hand, there's a fundamental issue of if the president can pardon himself and essentially do anything and get away with it, does that turn the Constitution into a self-contradictory document when it describes his role as the faithful execution of the law? That's the kind of fundamental question that the Supreme Court would clearly have to rule on if this became relevant. But as you mentioned, our White House team has some great reporting on at least that being that what is on the president's mind at this point.
Yeah, that's one of the things that had come up. I know Deutsche Bank is trying to call the debt that he owes them, which is a lot.
Yes.
Like you could probably feed every hungry person in North America for a full year on the amount of money he owes. Probably more than a year. You might be able to feed every hungry person in the world for the amount of money he owes. I don't even remember how much it is.
Ow.
More money than I will ever make in my entire life. Let's just put it that way.
Same.
But
all the little things that we talked about before, like him not giving up his tax returns, it's so we can find out shit about this, because like having countries that are able to, that could like do major leverage over the leader of your own country, like that's a problematic thing. We want tax returns out to prevent stuff like this.
Yeah. He only owes $340 million to Deutsche Bank.
Yeah.
Drop in the
like
bucket.
$1 for every person in this entire country. So
No big deal.
Yeah. But it's also, I think almost all of his properties are collateral for that, and he could be liable for paying all of that money back. But they were kind of betting that he would lose the election, and if he lost, they were going to make him pay it back. So.
Oh no, not Trump Tower. That's where the best taco salads are made in the world.
I know. I think the only one that isn't part of the collateral is Mar-a-Lago, and that's because Ivana Trump, who is Ivanka Trump's mother, she got that in the divorce.
Good for her.
Good for her. She should have taken him for more money. She should have gone for more than half.
So I guess there's nothing really left for Trump. Like he could refuse to leave the White House.
No, he can't.
He'd be forced out, right?
Yeah. As soon as Joe Biden is sworn in, Trump becomes a private citizen, and the Capitol Police can literally drag him out kicking and screaming.
Kind of want to see that.
I want to
Can
see
you
them
do
like
that in the Trump voice? Do the Trump getting dragged out of the White House kicking and screaming in Trump voice thing for me.
I was the best, the absolute best president you've ever had. Better than Lincoln, better than Nixon. Nixon was a great man. Hey, no, you can't take me out. This is my White House. I won the election.
That was tremendous.
What are bananas worth? $5?
Yeah. January 20th, Joe Biden becomes president. Trump will be on his way out. I'm sure some of those Capitol Police, I think some of them may be like, rubbing their hands and hoping that they get a chance.
Yeah.
I for one, hope it happens so I can see it.
I know. Just put that shit on live
Right.
TV. I just, oh my God, I can't wait. I can't.
I'm kind of
I have very few pleasures in this life. Let me have
I don't
that.
know. Trump getting dragged out of the White House. They could put that on like pay-per-view or something, and then they could take all the money that they would get like from all the worldwide subscriptions buying this video to balance the budget for a year maybe.
Oh my God,
Sunday. Come down and see the biggest man baby in the world get pulled out of a big old White House.
that would be amazing. I would love it.
I'd pay $10 for that.
I'm the
a medal
president of the United States. My hands are massive.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Me too.
I mean, I guess one of the biggest problems with this, though, is that he has such a huge following. And I mean, even this weekend, they had that big Stop the Steal rally, and the Proud Boys showed up, and I guess Gavin McInnes quit because he felt bad that people were being mean to him about being the leader of the Proud Boys. So I put it in my notes. Enrique Tarrio is their new head, or one of their new leaders. So while the Proud Boys were beating people up, he got a tour of the White House. Like, sweet deal, bro. But they're having all of these Stop the Steal rallies with Proud Boys showing up and beating people up.
Proud Boys, like I said, a men's club with a political problem and maybe a slight drinking problem. We're still trying to figure that one out. But we went from being a men's club to a club that now puts our lives and our livelihood on the line to protect people like you that come out to rallies
We protect you guys by standing in front of you guys when the opposition and Antifa come to try to inflict harm on you guys.
Fuck Antifa.
Fuck Antifa, exactly.
Far-right protesters and counter-protesters fought in downtown Washington on Saturday night, with local media reporting at least 4 people stabbed. The clashes took place amid Stop the Steal protest across the country, in which conservative groups claim, without evidence, that the November 3rd election was stolen from President Donald Trump. In Washington, around 200 members of the Proud Boys, a violent far-right group, joined marchers earlier near the Trump Hotel and were met by counter-protesters, including from the aggressive far-left anti-fascism movement Antifa. Police moved quickly to separate both groups, using pepper spray on both sides, according to witnesses. But after dark fell, the protesters splintered into smaller groups to roam the streets in search of their rivals. Protests were also held in other communities across the states, including Atlanta and Georgia, where Trump's campaign had sought to overturn Joe Biden's election victory.
There's one person in my neighborhood with a Trump 2020 flag, but it's like a tiny one, like maybe 8 by 10 paper, just like notebook paper sized. And there are people in neighborhoods around me that still have their Trump 2020 flags and signs, and they have their little spotlight on it so you can know that they're a Trump supporter. And in my parents' neighborhood, there's just every street has dozens of them. Like, people really believe in this guy. They really think he won the election and it got stolen from him. And it really shows that, 25% of Republicans trust the election results. That's 25% of them think that the election was actually fair. The other 75% think it was completely unfair, rigged, fraud, whatever.
That's scary. That's a large group of people.
It's ridiculous.
It's very sad also.
It's extremely sad. And then you have the president standing up there encouraging that shit.
Yeah.
Like, this is where, like, even with the pandemic, this is where we reap what we sow. This is where we sow the society we built. The lack of education, like the demonization of information in the media, the demonization of education. Like, this is where it comes to pass, where so much of the public believes in charismatic figures instead of facts and logic. And, like, it's like people can be swayed so easily. And now, like, millions of people, like, aren't buying what reality is selling, you know?
They call us Nazis because we what? Stand up for the Constitution? That's bullshit. No more bullshit.
This is a battle between good and evil.
We're here for a fair and honest election. Hey, let me hear you today. We're going to get loud.
The vote was not legitimate. We want a fair and transparent vote for the American people, and that's why we're out here. That's true. These men and women that died for this country to stop communism being spread across this country is being infiltrated in this country right now through the legal process and the electoral process. Are we going to stand for that shit?
All bets are off for the Republican Party. Sorry to tell you. I am the chairwoman of the Republican Party of Arizona, but if the Republican Party leaves us, I don't know what we are going to do. I've seen the inside of those Dominion machines. I've seen that they've deleted folders. I've seen that some have folders and others don't. I've seen what they do in their digital adjudication. Click, 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 click. All the test said is, was this done in Phoenix, Arizona? Yes. And did the numbers that they showed us from the fake ballots they created match the numbers from the fake ballots they ran through? Yes. That's not a certification of an election, folks. It's not. It's basically nothing.
The other side absolutely hates it when we love doing what we're doing. Capturing back America, the spirit. You guys make me just giddy. You give me that giddy up and go. We're already working on challenging the certified electors. And now what about the courts? How pathetic are the courts? Let's challenge them. We know exactly what we're doing. We know exactly how it's done. Let's show the country what we're made of. Absolutely. Live free or die. Freedom isn't cheap, folks. Freedom isn't cheap.
Look at the flyers. Don't touch me, guys. Don't touch me. Hey, get the out of here. Don't touch me. You're done. This is a permitted event, dude. Get the out of here. You're done. Get the out of here. Stop the steal. You're done. No, you're done. Guys, hey, this is political theater. Political theater, guys. Hey, who won?
No more bullshit. We stand up for the Constitution, and I'm going to tell you this right now. What you will not see is me laying over, rolling over, and just going along with this communist agenda that's being taken over in this state.
These Stop the Steal rallies have been, if not outright violent, then threatening from the start. And, charging at poll workers or threatening to barge into these polling places. And, poll workers had been threatened, and the Georgia Secretary of State had been threatened because the Georgia results didn't come out right. His family had been threatened. In Michigan, when the electors met to cast their votes, they had to do it in secret with the state office closed because somebody had threatened to blow up the building or something. I don't remember what the actual threat was, but there was some credible threat of violence, so they had to close up the office, not allow anybody in, and it's ridiculous. And then people are like, oh, it's a contested election. Nobody's agreeing on who won. It's like, no, one person clearly won the election and a bunch of people are getting violent about it. And it's being encouraged from the guy who lost.
On the time this election comes out, I'm going to add a little update at the end here just to see any final results. Just to see if there are any final results. When I recorded that, it was on December 14th, and none of us could have predicted what all this rhetoric was leading to. In hindsight, it seems obvious, but none of us could have predicted how far it makes. But before we get to the fucking insurrection that happened on January 6th, let's go to the other thing that is an impeachable offense from Donald Trump about the election. So his cases have been dismissed by the Supreme Court, and his legal ability to fight this election has run out. So what does Donald do? He keeps up his rhetoric on news programs and on Twitter and on other outlets, saying that this is definitely still a stolen election. And then, on January 3rd, he makes an hour-long phone call to the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. And with lawyers and delegates present, over an hour-long phone call, he made threats towards the governor, veiled threats, and he groveled towards the governor, seeing if there's any way that he could swing the election in his favor. I'll be playing you little clips of it as we go forward, but here's just a taste of the phone call.
So, Mr. President, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, Brad and Ryan and everybody. We appreciate the time and the call. So we've spent a lot of time on this, and if we could just go over some of the numbers, I think it's pretty clear that we won. We won very substantially, Georgia. You even see it by rally size, frankly. We'd be getting 25,000, 30,000 people a rally, and the competition would get less than 100 people, and it never made sense. But we have a number of things. We have at least two or three, anywhere from 250 to 300,000 ballots were dropped mysteriously into the rolls. Much of that had to do with Fulton County, which hasn't been checked. We think that if you check the signatures, a real check of the signatures going back in Fulton County, you'll find at least a couple of 100,000 of forged signatures of people with who have been forged, and we are quite sure that's going to happen. Another tremendous number. We're going to have an accurate number over the next 2 days with certified accountants, but an accurate number will be given, but it's in the 50s of thousands, and that's people that went to vote and they were told they can't vote because they've already been voted for, and it's a very sad thing. They walked out complaining, but the number is large. We'll have it for you, but it's much more than the number of 11,779. That's the current margin is only 11,779. Brad, I think you agree with that, right? That's something I think everyone, at least that's a number that everyone agrees on. But Ruby Freeman, that was the tape that's been shown all over the world that makes everybody look bad. You, me, and everybody else. Where they got number one, they said very clearly, and it's been reported that they said there was a major water main break. Everybody fled the area, and then they came back. Ruby Freeman, her daughter, and a few people. There were no Republican poll watchers. Actually, there were no Democrat poll watchers. I guess they were them, but there were no Democrats either, and there was no law enforcement. Early in the morning, they went to the table with the black robe, the black shield, and they pulled out the votes. Those votes were put there a number of hours before. The table was put there. I think it was, Brad, you would know, it was probably 8 hours or 7 hours before, and then it was stuffed with votes. They weren't in an official voter box. They were in what looked to be suitcases or trunks, suitcases, but they weren't in voter boxes. That's the difference in the votes. But we've had hundreds of thousands of ballots that we're able to actually, we'll get you a pretty accurate number. You don't need much of a number because the number that, in theory, I lost by the margin would be 11,779. But you also have substantial numbers of people, thousands and thousands, who went to the voting place on November 3rd, were told they couldn't
And that's
vote.
how the first part of this phone call goes. He really just regurgitates the grand marathon of all the hoax claims that he's been repeating this whole time, all of which have been investigated, checked, and debunked. Dead people aren't voting. People aren't pretending to be other people to vote. There is no evidence of widespread voter fraud in America. It just doesn't bore out in the results. People in his own team, including William Barr, have checked into this and found nothing. But for the first part of this phone call, he just regurgitates all the same points. If you think there's sophisticated arguments happening in the courtrooms, there aren't. He's repeating the same stuff, the same things, in presumably professional quarters, the same conspiracies, and he's getting nowhere. So at some point, Trump is not interrupted, but in a pause in his speech between conspiracy theories, somebody jumps in, presumably one of the lawyers or one of the people that was on the call with Trump and the Secretary of State, giving Brad, the Secretary of State, an opportunity to respond to this deluge of conspiracy theories on the phone call.
So, Mr. President, if I might be able to jump in, and I'll give Brad a chance, Mr. Secretary. Obviously there are allegations where we believe that not every vote or fair vote and legal vote was counted, and that's at odds with the representation from the Secretary of State's office. What I'm hopeful for is there some way that we can find some kind of an agreement to look at this a little bit more fully.
Well, I've listened to what the president has just said. President Trump we've had several lawsuits, and we've had to respond in court to the lawsuits and the contentions. We don't agree that you have one. I didn't agree about the 200,000 number that you mentioned, and I could go through that point by point. What we had done is we gave our state senate about 1.5 hours of our time going through the election issue by issue. Going back, primarily what you've talked about here, focused in on primarily, I believe, is the absentee ballot process. I don't believe that you're really questioning the Dominion machines, because we did a hand retally, a 100% retally of all the ballots, and compared that to what the machine said, and it came up with virtually the same result. Then we did the recount, and we got virtually the same result. So I guess we could probably take that off the table. I don't think there's an issue about that. I think what you were saying...
Brad, not that there's not an issue, but because we have a big issue with Dominion and other states, and perhaps in yours, but we haven't felt we needed to go there. And just to maybe put a little different spin on what Mark is saying, Mark Meadows, we'd like to go further, but we don't really need to. We have all the votes we need. We won the state. If you took, these are the most minimal numbers, the numbers that I gave you. Those are numbers that are certified, your absentee ballots sent to vacant addresses, your out-of-state voters, 4,925. When you add them up, it's many times the 11,779 number. So we could go through. We have not gone through your Dominion, so we can't give them blessing. I mean, in other states, we think we found tremendous corruption with Dominion machines, but we'll have to see. But we only lost the state by that number, 11,000 votes, and 779. So with that being said, with just what we have, and with just what we have, we're giving you minimal numbers. We're doing the most conservative numbers possible. We're many times above the margin, and so we don't really have to, Mark. I don't think we have to go through machines because what's the difference between winning the election by two votes and winning it by 500,000 votes? I think we probably did win it by 500,000. One of the things that happened, Brad, is we have other people coming in now from Alabama and from South Carolina and from other states, and they're saying it's impossible for you to have lost Georgia. We won, in Alabama we set a record, got the highest vote ever. In Georgia we set a record with a massive amount of votes, and they say it's not possible to have lost Georgia. And I could tell you by our rallies. I could tell you by the rally I'm having on Monday night, the place they already have lines of people standing out front waiting. It's just not possible to have lost Georgia. It's not possible. When I heard it was close, I said, there's no way. But they dropped a lot of votes in there late at night. You know that, Brett. And that's what we are working on very, very stringently. But regardless of those votes, with all of it being said, we lost by essentially 11,000 votes, and we have many more votes already calculated and certified too. So I just don't know, Mark, I don't know what's the purpose. I won't give Dominion a pass because we found too many bad things, but we don't need Dominion or anything else. We have won this election in Georgia based on all of this, and there's nothing wrong with saying that, Brad. I mean, having a correct. The people of Georgia are angry, and these numbers are going to be repeated on Monday night, along with others that we're going to have by that time, which are much more substantial even. And the people of Georgia are angry. The people of the country are angry, and there's nothing wrong with saying that. That you've recalculated, because the 2,236 and absentee ballots, I mean, they're all exact numbers that were done by accounting firms, law firms, etc. And even if you cut them in half, and cut them in half again, it's more votes than we need.
Well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have is the data you have is wrong. We talked to the congressmen, and they were surprised, but they I guess there was a person named Mr. Raynard that came to these meetings and presented data. And he said that there was dead people, I believe it was upward of 5,000. The actual number were two people that were dead that voted.
So a few times, Brad, the Georgia Secretary of State, tries to gently suggest to Trump that his information is wrong and presents him with some points of naked, straightforward evidence that what he is claiming is untrue. Now, if we take the words that Trump responds with at face value, he could just be saying, hey, correct your data. But my personal opinion is he is using veiled, coded language to suggest what he wants. When he says, hey, there's nothing wrong with just recalculating, he's saying, you should change the numbers to be in my benefit. In my opinion, that's how I interpret it. And then Trump goes on. And, of course, Trump responds with going back to another deluge of the same conspiracy theories. Videos that have been slowed down to reveal secret ballot boxes full of Biden votes being added with the real ballot boxes and other such conspiracies that, when checked, were not proven to be credible.
She stuffed the ballot boxes. Let's face it, Brad. I mean, they did it in slow motion replay magnified, right? She stuffed the ballot boxes. They were stuffed like nobody's ever seen them stuffed before. So there's a term for it when it's a machine instead of a ballot box. But she stuffed the machine. She stuffed the ballot. Each ballot went 3 times. They were showing, here's ballot number 1. Here it is a second time, third time, next ballot. I mean, look, Brett, we have a new tape that we're going to release. It's devastating. And by the way, that one event is much more than the 11,000 votes that we're talking about. It's, that one event was a disaster. It's just, but it was something that it can't be disputed. And again, we have a version that you haven't seen, but it's magnified. It's magnified, and you can see everything. And she for some reason, they put it in 3 times each ballot, and I don't know why, but why? I don't know why 3 times. Why not 5 times, right? But yeah, go ahead.
You're talking about the State Farm video, and I think it's extremely unfortunate that Rudy Giuliani or his people, they sliced and diced that video and took it out of context. So the next day we brought in WSB TV and we let them see the full run of tape. And what you'll see, the events that transpired are nowhere near what was projected by,
But where were the poll watchers, Brad? There were no poll watchers there. There were no Democrats or Republicans. There was no security there. It was late in the evening, early in the morning, and there was nobody else in the room. Where were the poll watchers? And why did they say a water main broke, which they did, and which is reported in the newspapers? They said they left. They ran out because of a water main break, and there was no water main. There was nothing. There was no break. There was no water main break. But if you take out everything, where were the Republican poll watchers? Even where were the Democrat poll watchers? Because there were none. And then you say, well, they left their station. If you look at the tape, and this was reviewed by professional police and detectives.
As you listen to this upcoming clip, just see the kind of language that Donald Trump is using here. He's saying things like, I'm informing you that you're letting this happen and it's illegal. He's saying things like, he says, this is going to be very costly for you in many ways. Like a B-rate movie villain, except in real life, the real-life president is threatening the real Secretary of State. It's really happening. Well, it really happened. Trump goes on to bargain with him, saying, the people of Georgia are very angry, and they're not going to vote Republican if they're angry with me, so why don't you, out of respect for the election, just sway the results in my favor? that's essentially what he's going to say.
Now, do you think it's possible that they shredded ballots in Fulton County? Because that's what the rumor is. And also that Dominion took out machines. That Dominion is really moving fast to get rid of their machinery. Do you know anything about that? Because that's illegal.
This is Ryan, Germany. No, Dominion has not moved any machinery out of Fulton County. We're having.
Well, but have they moved? Have they moved the inner parts of the machines and replaced them with other parts?
No.
You sure, Ryan?
I'm sure.
You should want to have an accurate election. And you're a Republican.
We believe that we do have an accurate election.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't have. Not even close. You're off by hundreds of thousands of votes. You know what they did, and you're not reporting it. That's a criminal offense. And you can't let that happen. That's a big risk to you and to Ryan, your lawyer. That's a big risk. But they are shredding ballots, in my opinion, based on what I've heard, and they are removing machinery, and they're moving it as fast as they can, both of which are criminal fines, and you can't let it happen, and you are letting it happen. I'm notifying you that you're letting it happen. So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state. So tell me, Brad, what are we going to do? We won the election, and it's not fair to take it away from us like this. And it's going to be very costly in many ways. And I think you have to say that you're going to re-examine it, and you can re-examine it, but re-examine it with people that want to find answers, not people that don't want to find answers. For instance, I'm hearing Ryan, and he's probably, I'm sure, a great lawyer and everything, but he's making statements about those ballots that he doesn't know. But he's making them with he did make them with surety, but now I think he's less sure, because the answer is they all went to Biden. And that alone wins us the election by a lot. So.
Mr. President, you have people that submit information, and we have our people that submit information, and then it comes before the court, and the court then has to make a determination. We have to stand by our numbers. We believe our numbers are right.
Well, under law, you're not allowed to give faulty election results, okay? You're not allowed to do that, and that's what you've done. This is a faulty election result. And honestly, this should go very fast. You should meet tomorrow, because you have a big election coming up. And because of what you've done to the president, the people of Georgia know that this was a scam. And because of what you've done to the president, a lot of people aren't going out to vote. And a lot of Republicans are going to vote negative because they hate what you did to the president. Okay? They hate it. And they're going to vote. And if you would be respected, if this thing could be straightened out before the election. You have a big election coming up on Tuesday.
In conclusion, there's a lot of people, a lot of politicians who think this is an impeachable offense, because he's using the power of his presidency, the influence of his presidency, to pressure a Secretary of State in order to swing the election in his favor. He's trying to overstep democracy in his favor. Now, let's move on to the insurrection, the attempted coup by the people that follow Donald Trump. So how did this all start? Arguably, it started from the beginning of the Trump presidency, perhaps even before that. Rhetoric saying that they need to fight and take their rights back, and they have to punish those who are getting in the way of quote-unquote freedom, and right-wing talking points about brutality and violence being needed to protect your rights from some group of people. Sometimes it was Muslims, sometimes it was black people, sometimes it was Antifa. But this scary group of other people threaten rights, and you need to be ready to fight for them when the time comes. And Donald Trump has echoed that sentiment, encouraging and suggesting that violence is the answer when the time comes. And his reporters heard the message loud and clear. Here are some of them. The night before, on January 5th, 2021, on their way to Washington, D.C., to the insurrection on January 6th.
Yeah, we have all these made up.
All right, guys, we have assignments for your bus.
Yeah, excuse me.
If you have yellow, it means you haven't paid yet. I know. All right. Order alphabetical. Yes, it is. Our last name. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
I've never had the opportunity to do something like this before. Normally, I'm a very mellow guy. I don't like conflict, and I'm not going there for conflict, but tensions are too high this day and age. Enough is enough. I need to go down, show my support President Trump, support the ideals that I stand for in a peaceful protest manner.
President Trump won the election by a landslide, huge landslide, and it was stolen by Biden and the Democrats. And we, the silent majority, are not silent anymore. We are peaceful protesters. We are not sore loser because we didn't lose. We won.
We want to make sure that they see hundreds of thousands of people outside, and hopefully they decide to not accept the electoral votes. So they have the option. They're going to open them and decide whether they're legit or not to accept them. We're not going to roll over and let this go. There's no way. So we won't let this stand. We will fight tooth and nail. This isn't over just if Biden gets inaugurated. If that happens, we'll never stop fighting. And Trump will be our president for the next 4 years, no matter who they inaugurate.
Now at about 6 in the morning, January 6th, 2021, Trump supporters begin to gather in the National Mall, an area just in front of the White House where gatherings and celebrations sometimes take place. They were trying to get a prime space to listen to the Stop the Steal rally that Donald Trump was going to spark off by speaking in this area, and then they were going to march. Thousands of Trump supporters gathered, many of them having live streams active with GoPros attached to their bodies or other sorts of camera equipment, documenting live the crimes they were about to commit.
I share your conviction that President Trump should remain president. I share that conviction.
The law matters with us.
I share that conviction. But the law matters.
At about noon, 12 p.m., Donald Trump begins to speak at the podium. A lot of people join him in speaking, including Rudy Giuliani, his sons and family, and they all start to spout a certain sort of combative rhetoric. First, Donald Trump.
Now it is up to Congress to confront this egregious assault on our democracy. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you.
By the way, Trump is a bullshitter till the end. In his speech, he said, "I'll be there with you marching," but right after the speech, he went right down to his White House bunker and watched a TV screen.
We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here, we're going to walk down to the Capitol. And we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them. Because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
Then Rudy Giuliani.
Now, if they ran such a clean election, why wouldn't they make all the machines available immediately? If they ran such a clean election, they'd have you come in and look at the paper ballots. Who hides evidence? Criminals hide evidence, not honest people. So, over the next 10 days, we get to see the machines that are crooked, the ballots that are fraudulent, and if we're wrong, we will be made fools of. But if we're right, a lot of them will go to jail. So, let's have trial by combat. I'm willing to stake my reputation. The president is willing to stake his reputation on the fact that we're going to find criminality there.
Eric Trump.
Doesn't matter. They can lie, they can cheat, they can steal. My father has started a movement, and this movement will never, ever die. It will never die.
Laura Trump.
Our family didn't get in this fight for just 4 years. We are in this fight to the bitter end. We are going to take our country back, okay?
Donald Trump Jr.
The people who did nothing to stop this deal. This gathering should send a message to them. This isn't their Republican Party anymore. This is Donald Trump's Republican Party. We've been our own worst enemy. All you got to do is look to Georgia, where you had Republicans saying, well, I don't like the way the game is played, so let's take our ball and go home. No, guys, hey, guess what? That was music to Chuck Schumer's ears. That was music to Nancy Pelosi's ears. And that is what so many in the Republican establishment have created, that sort of mentality. Okay, we'll turn the other cheek. We'll roll over and die. We'll fold and give up. No more! USA! USA! USA!
Shortly before 1 p.m., the speech is ended. See, the crowd that's been riled up since November, because these same talking points, these same fight for your rights, fight for democracy, don't let the Democrats steal it, don't let Joe Biden steal the vote, Trump is the true winner, you have to fight and take for what's yours, all that has been going for months. And these people who are dedicated enough to fly out to Washington, D.C., to see Trump in person for a giant Stop the Steal rally, have now been just riled up by Trump, his family, Rudy Giuliani, and other speakers. They begin to go towards to the chambers where the Electoral College votes are being confirmed. And violence begins to escalate immediately. They begin to wrestle for control with the Capitol Police. Capitol Police, who, mind you, are ill-equipped and outnumbered for the size of the protest that was coming, and If random people on Twitter can predict a giant protest on the horizon, then the U.S.'s intelligence agencies should have been able to predict this as well, and they knew it was coming, but yet they didn't hire enough Capitol Police. And the Trump protesters began to wrestle with the Capitol Police immediately, and began to attack news crews outside of the Capitol. Now here, there are a number of conflicting stories, and this information is still coming out. There seems to be a few videos that appear to show Capitol Police opening up barriers and letting people in, opening up doors and letting people in. But this isn't the typical behavior from the Capitol Police. Most of the Capitol Police are doing what they can with their limited numbers, setting up barriers and trying to block people from breaking in.
Pull them this way! Pull them!
Soon, in many areas, they broke the lines of the Capitol Police trying to hold them back, and just flooded the Capitol. Some of them scaled a wall to get in. You can see some videos of them breaking windows to get in. You can see in some areas doors have been locked, but they are smashing windows and reaching around to unlock to break into those areas as well. They get into the central rotunda, and some people report that many Trump supporters pissed and shit in the central chamber of the Capitol. There are some reports that they rubbed it on paintings and walls. Very classy.
Stormed the Capitol building. They are marching through now.
They soon advanced towards the chamber where the votes were being kept, and there, the Capitol Police in that central chamber had barred the doors with furniture in an effort to keep them out. There was a standoff with the guns in that central chamber, and even that didn't stop these Trump supporters from entering.
My challenge today is not about the good people of Arizona.
And it will stand in recess until the call of the chair.
We'll pause.
Protesters are in the building.
Thank you.
There wasn't anything you said.
They broke the glass. Everybody stay down. Get down. Oh my God, they got fire on them.
At one point, a woman, one of these people who broke into the Capitol, started to climb through a broken window of one of the doors that they smashed in and go towards the central chamber where these Senate members are sitting. And she is shot in the neck. And she is one of 5 casualties on this day.
Good job, guys! Go! Bust it down! It was just a flashbang!
The members casting the vote are escorted out through whatever means they have. I'm sure they have underground tunnels and evacuation routes in Washington. So they evacuate that chamber, and these Trump supporters flood in. There's pictures of them sitting on the chairs of people's desks, going through documents, going through computers. And then they are allowed to stroll out at their leisure, sometimes escorted by hand, down the steps by Capitol Police, treated with kid gloves in comparison to the BLM protests and how police have dealt with them in the past, including the Capitol Police, who, let's not forget, Trump sicked on BLM protesters in order to take a photo op, a picture of him holding a Bible upside down in front of a church. So, you know, Trump supporters breaking into the U.S. Capitol to cancel a Senate vote, let's not bring out all the cavalry then. BLM protesters, and we need to take a photo in front of a church, let's bring out the cavalry then. You can see the 2 ways that these people are treated.
Despite being unlocked, the hooligans who attacked the Capitol smashed the door virtually off its hinges, tore things off the wall, including this Chinese scroll that a very good friend of mine had made by a renowned artist, left a flag, the Trump flag here to mark their presence. Stole the laptop that was sitting on the table next to the telephone.
Every one of the House members and a third of us swore to uphold just 3 days ago. I will tell you as I look ahead that I am confident that 2 weeks from now,
smoking
Joseph
something.
Biden will be sworn in as the next president. The last decades have observed the Senate has steadily shrunk.
So count this off as trashed. You can see the debris all over the floor. What happened today was an assault by the domestic terrorists who stormed the Capitol, but it was also an assault on our Constitution by those who moved to destroy the ballots of the people of Arizona. And later tonight, we anticipate will move to destroy the ballots from the people of Pennsylvania in the Electoral College in order to give Trump 4 more years. We cannot let that happen, and we will not let that happen.
So, the aftermath and fallout. The politicians that took part in this eventually returned to confirm the votes later in the night, making Joe Biden officially president-to-be for the 148th time since November. And the spin started immediately. Republican lawmakers, who just hours before had been encouraging people to fight for their rights and take what was theirs, now are condemning people for doing what they suggested. Donald Trump even put out a video the next day on his Twitter before his Twitter was quickly cancelled. He seems to, for the most part, not concede that he lost the election, but concede that he's going to give up the seat of power. He tells his supporters that yes, the election is a fraud, but we can't have violence, so just forget about it. And he says that he will not be at the inauguration. Him saying, "I will not be at the inauguration," has been suggested by some people to be a signal to some of his supporters, saying, "I'm not going to be there, so do what you will." I don't know. Make your own decision. What do you think he's trying to say with this message?
I would like to begin by addressing the heinous attack on the United States Capitol. Like all Americans, I am outraged by the violence, lawlessness, and mayhem. I immediately deployed the National Guard and federal law enforcement to secure the building and expel the intruders. America is and must always be a nation of law and order. The demonstrators who infiltrated the Capitol have defiled the seat of American democracy. To those who engaged in the acts of violence and destruction, you do not represent our country. And to those who broke the law, you will pay. We have just been through an intense election and emotions are high, but now tempers must be cooled and calm restored. We must get on with the business of America. My campaign vigorously pursued every legal avenue to contest the election results. My only goal was to ensure the integrity of the vote. In so doing, I was fighting to defend American democracy. I continue to strongly believe that we must reform our election laws to verify the identity and eligibility of all voters and to ensure faith and confidence in all future elections. Now Congress has certified the results. A new administration will be inaugurated on January 20th. My focus now turns to ensuring a smooth, orderly, and seamless transition of power. This moment calls for healing and reconciliation. 2020 has been a challenging time for our people. A menacing pandemic has upended the lives of our citizens, isolated millions in their homes, damaged our economy, and claimed countless lives. Defeating this pandemic and rebuilding the greatest economy on earth will require all of us working together. It will require a renewed emphasis on the civic values of patriotism, faith, charity, community, and family. We must revitalize the sacred bonds of love and loyalty that bind us together as one national family. To the citizens of our country, serving as your president has been the honor of my lifetime. And to all of my wonderful supporters, I know you are disappointed, but I also want you to know that our incredible journey is only just beginning. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
That's how the story of the episode we recorded on December 14th ended. With a fucking coup attempt. So that escalated quickly, didn't it? Whether Donald Trump likes it or not, he's not going to be president on January 20th. A meteor could come from space and crush Joe Biden into a little red paste, and it would not result in Donald Trump becoming president again. He lost. He needs to get over it, and so do his supporters, and so does America. If democracy means anything to Americans anymore. Well, that's enough preaching for me. I'm going to hand it back to the people who recorded this episode on December 14th. Here is the ending.
Well, Well, this whole thing got so ridiculous in like even it spilled across our borders here, like to the point where on like November 16th, Elections Canada had to post a tweet saying that Elections Canada does not use Dominion voting machines. And there's certainly questions around electronic voting, but we're not going to get into any of that here. I mean, I have confidence in the result of the American election, but they stated this because these right-wing nut jobs on our side of the border were starting to perpetuate the same bullshit that Dominion voting machines are affecting the Canadian election. And it's like Elections Canada hand counts ballots and has always hand counted ballots. So it's just crazy how like this lack of information, shit that's so easily Googleable, isn't even verified, you know?
Right.
No. People are living in their own reality, though. It's just, it's ridiculous.
Well, that's just your opinion.
Yeah. That's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah, I used to think the phrase post-truth was kind of hyperbolic, but I don't think
alternative
so much
facts
anymore. Yeah. I think it's a perfectly fitting phrase for the time. No. Do we have any final thoughts on this mess before we close this one out?
Yeah, I'm still mad that Rudy Giuliani totally fucked up that My Cousin Vinny scene. He tried to bring up that scene at the Four Seasons Total Landscaping press conference about when Joe Pesci's character is cross-examining that witness, and he's like, yeah, she can't see, and that's why, the poll observers they couldn't see. He brought that up, but he completely missed the point of the scene, which was that eyewitness evidence is not credible.
How far were the defendants from you when you saw them entering the sack of suds?
About 100 feet.
100 feet. Would you hold this, please? Thank you. Sorry, excuse me. Sorry. Okay, this is 50 feet. That's half the distance. How many fingers am I holding up?
Let the record show that counsel is holding up 2 fingers.
Your Honor, please, huh?
Oh. Sorry.
Yeah.
And through the magic of editing, I can play those back to back.
That scene was brilliant. You ruined it. Completely ruined it. How dare you? But on the plus side, everyone remembered how amazing My Cousin Vinny was and immediately went out and watched it, as they should.
I gotta watch it again sometime. Dig out my DVD of it.
Absolutely. Do it. It's
I
perfect.
often make reference to the Utes.
I was just going to say, my final thoughts are, I love you Americans, and I'm sorry that your elections are so fucky.
Sorry about Ken Paxton, everybody.
Yeah.
I hope our Attorney General goes to jail soon.
We're critical of America and Americans like regularly, just because there's a lot to talk about there. But I try not to say it derisively. Like, I see this group of 350, like 300 million, like odd people, like talented, like one of the richest nations on earth. It seems like there's so much potential, and I see so many people being held down and disadvantaged. It's just like, it seems like you guys deserve better, and I want you to have better, and it makes me sad that you don't get the opportunities you should. Like, I mean, we have problems in Canada too, but like, it's not that I dislike Americans. I wish you guys had better, in your institutions and systems.
Yeah. I mean, we all definitely do. In a sane world, this would all be satire, but unfortunately not living in a sane world. This is the dumbest timeline, and it makes me sad.
I still had hope for a while that at some point Trump was going to unzip his person suit, and it was actually going to be Sacha Baron Cohen come out and go, ha ha ha, it was me, screw all you, but...
I'm still waiting, and it hasn't happened. It's very rude of him. Very rude.
Listen, I don't know who this Sacha Baron Cohen person is, but it's definitely not me.
Oh, that was very sad.
So, welcome, Joe Biden. You're on watch.
Definitely. Now that you've been elected, we can all legally make fun of you because no one actually likes Joe Biden. He's just less of a shit stain than Donald Trump is.
Congratulations, President-elect Biden. Fuck you, you right-wing piece of shit.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
one of my friends put it this way. is that 4 years ago, the guy got elected and shit all over the White House. This year we elected the mop and bucket to clean it up. So, in 4 years, hopefully we get a real candidate. But, oh well.
AOC 2024?
God.
Yeah, I'd take her.
Any competent adults 2024, please God.
Right? Come on.
Any competent adult 2024. I've been with Gallifrey in studio with
Richard Bigley,
Miriam,
and Chris.
And after a good pause, I'm the soundboard demon. Fuck you, Donald Trump, and fuck you, Joe Biden.
And for the ending song, I'm just going to hand it off to Pepper Coyote.
Hey, this is very serious musician Pepper Coyote on very serious podcast Occultae Veritatis. They're about to play my song When I Die, which is also on Spotify right now for free. Can I get a slide whistle? For when I die and when I'm ashes and no more songs I can repeat, whoever's singing at my funeral had better learn to move their feet. 'Cause when I die right around 40, and when my fuse has reached its end, you best believe we'll all be drinking. Now don't ask why, maybe when. Some people croak it and then everyone chokes on bitter tears. Oh Lord, why'd he have to go? But when I stroll, I think we'll all probably know that I was due any time. I mean, you can't live that hard for long, so when I die and when I'm buried, come watch me sink into the ground. Forget the dirt, just drain a bottle. And if they ask, just say I've drowned. For when I die and when it's over, and all my friends are left behind, I wouldn't doubt that they'll be jealous. They'll have to do more work than I. Some people croak it and then everyone chokes on bitter tears. Oh Lord, why'd he have to go? But when I stroll, I think we'll all probably know that I was due any time. I mean, you can't live that hard for long, so when I die and when I'm sober, there'll be more stories left to write. Take up my pen and get to scribbling. Puncture your silence, kill your fright.
Hey, so this is a super serious episode with insurrection and death. So let's go over just some light things you can do to help this indie little podcast grow. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe on whatever service you're listening to us on. That way you get notified and you make sure not to miss any of our future subjects, just in case anything you really like comes across our board and we cover it. Something else you can do is tell your friends and family. As much as advertising does its part, still the bedrock of media growth is people passing on things they enjoy amongst each other. Recommendations, especially personal recommendations. And hey, if you know someone that might enjoy us, but they don't seem like they know what a podcast is, show them. Show them how a podcast works. Something else you can do is engage with our social media. You can like our social media pages and follow us there. That's at Occultae V on Twitter. We are OV Podcast on Instagram, and we are also at OV Podcast on Facebook, or you can just search Occultae Veritatis Podcast. If you have opinions about episodes we've done, you can go to our website's contact page and send us an email, or just send an email to feedback@ovpod.ca. And if you want to join the cult and be welcomed under the warm arm of Valhalla's embrace, you too can join our Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Every little bit helps and keeps this ship floating. Patreon.com/OVPod. Well, I'll see you next week for a subject that's not so current. Believe me, as exciting as current events are, sometimes one gets burned out talking about them. When I say one, I mean all the hosts on the podcast. But who knows, maybe something big will happen that we'll have to cover in the future. Have a wonderful night.